Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today, I have a special guest. He is the author of the Three Kingdoms Chronicles series, and of course, the new novel Undead Samurai. No other than Mr. Baptiste Pinson Wu.
Hey Danielle, thank you very much for inviting me back on your podcast slash channel, maybe.
Yes, we evolve plus channel. Yes, also Mr. Baptiste, can you please introduce yourself?
Very with pleasure. So, as I think this is the third time I'm invited on Book 101, so always a pleasure. My name is Baptiste Pinson Wu, and I am a writer of historical fiction or historical fantasy books. And so far, my books are related to East Asian cultures. So I have published three books in the Three Kingdoms Chronicles series, which is a series set in second and third century China. And I have just released about 2 weeks ago now a historical fantasy slash horror novel called Undead Samurai, which is set in early 17th century Japan. And this one, yeah, it's not as historically accurate because there are zombies in it. So as you can guess, it's not authentic story.
Oh, yes. So before we go on to your new novel, let's do the recap of your Three Kingdoms Chronicles. Let's start with the Yellow Revolt or Yellow Sky Revolt.
Yeah. So Yellow Sky Revolt was my first published novel. It came out a year and 3-4 months ago, maybe, and is the introduction to a series following the events of the Three Kingdoms period, or preceding the Three Kingdoms period of China. So for people who don't know, the Three Kingdoms is the name of a period of third century China, and it was probably one of the bloodiest civil war in human history. Now, of course, it didn't happen out of nowhere. So Yellow Sky Revolt, then Heroes of Chaos, then the following books really discuss what happened before this split of China into three different states. So really, and Yellow Sky Revolt is focusing on a peasant rebellion, a peasant, maybe we can even say religious rebellion that shook China in 184. And we follow up.
Wow.
So in order to
Yes.
do this, we see this rebellion through the eyes of a child who's being swept into the rebellion despite himself, because he's only 7 years old as it begins.
Yes, indeed. So let's go to the number two series, Heroes of Chaos.
Yep. So in Heroes of Chaos, so we follow the same character. His name is Liao Chun, and he's now about, I think at the beginning of the book, he's 12 or 13. My apologies, forgot exactly how old is my character. And then we see his the beginning of his military training. Now he's no longer with the rebels. He's a member of imperial army. You could say it's not exactly imperial, but anyway, he's more on the side of the empire, and he's growing into this army, and he's climbing the ladders of the ranks, even though, well, times are very difficult, because that is when the whole country seems to erupt into some kind of pre-civil war, we could say, with every warlord trying to create its own power. But still, the Han Empire still exists at this point.
Yes, Heroes of Chaos. And of course, the last Not the last, the latest in the
Latest. Yeah.
series. Yes, because I remember that you will be have more series on this Three Kingdoms Chronicles. So the latest in the series, Dynasty Killers.
Yeah, so first you're right. This series is intended to be about 12 books long. So we are going to go through all the life of this main character, Liao Chun, who is going to be renamed Liao Hua later, as we know from the beginning. Uh, and in Dynasty Killers, so now he's grown up, still very young. He's about 18, 19 at the beginning of Dynasty Killers, and he's in charge of a group, special forces of a warlord named Cao Cao. So he's being sent on several missions for his lord that are, you could say, black ops. It looks like black ops operations in ancient China. But as those missions go, he starts to really dislike the methods of his lord, and he starts to wonder if maybe there is another path for him to grow in this world, to leave a mark in this world that doesn't revolve around assassination and violence and these kind of things. So this is the book among the three that I prefer, because the main character is all grown up now, and he has an impact on the world. He's no longer just a spectator, and he also starts to realize that ambition is good, but it shouldn't hurt everyone around him.
Yes. Interesting, Mr. Baptiste. So, if you have 12 series on the Three Kingdoms of Chronicles, so I mean to say you have a lot of books to promote on Book 101.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, but before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening, of course, in Japan. Japan people, thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because according to my analytics, I got 56% audience share in Tokyo, Aoishi at 24, Miyazaki at 4%, Gifu at 2%, Nara at 2%, Wakayama at 2%, Hoyago at 2%, Kimomoto at 2%, and a lot more. Thank you so much, Japan, or arigato gozaimasu for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Mr. Baptiste Pinson Wu. So, Mr. Baptiste, let's talk about your latest book. How did you craft it?
So this the latest published novel is called Undead Samurai, and like I said earlier, it is the story of a group of samurai, a group of 9 warriors uh, crossing Japan. They have to travel through Japan in order to destroy an item uh, that gives the power to revive fallen warriors to someone. So there's basically a drum master, I call him in the book, who can use a drum to revive the dead. And he doesn't intend to use this power for good purpose, as you can imagine. So 9 warriors that don't really know each other to begin with are being gathered and sent on this mission. So it's really a mix of Seven Samurai and The Walking Dead, if you want. It's a good way to summarize it, I think. And so I think I always wanted to write stories about zombies. I think zombies are a very good asset in a book. They can make a really funny or interesting series or novel. And but I didn't know in what setting I wanted to use them. And I don't know why I came up with I decided to use them in a samurai setting. I think it's just because I live in Japan, and I wanted to write something that's close to me for once, so I could just look outside the window and, okay, what kind of forest do I see? What kind of mountain, temples, etc. And I wanted something that wasn't as heavy in terms of research, historical research. The Three Kingdoms Chronicles require a lot of research. Undead Samurai, I wanted to use what I knew already of Japan. Of course, I had to do some research, but not as much. And I just wanted to have fun writing something a bit silly, but very personal too.
So, Mr. Baptiste, Undead Samurai, is this a series, a trilogy, or quartet?
So it is a standalone. This one is a standalone, but it has potential for more. So what I mean by that is that if people really like Undead Samurai, if it's basically if it sells well, uh, there is a lot of potential for more books in this series. So I have some ideas for books that will be directly related to Undead Samurai. So basically a prequel to it. So in the same country, not so long before Undead Samurai. But I also want to expand and create basically an undead warrior world, so where I could use the same idea of zombies in different settings and times. For example, I'm really interested in doing undead Spartans, so to retell the story of the Battle of Thermopylae, but with zombies in it. So basically, there's a lot of potential for more, but this book works as a standalone.
Okay, looking forward for that. If there's any expansion. So, what was the writing process of Undead Samurai?
I think I spent it was quite fast. I think the writing took me about 3 weeks for the first draft, maybe a bit under 3 weeks. I forgot. And I know I spent the first 2 days before writing. I spent the first 2 days uh, basically thinking spending all my free time inventing the main characters, the 9 characters, because I wanted a book that was more interesting on the character side than anything else. So I wanted those characters to be really alive and to be all unique. I wanted all of them to bring something to the table. So I spent a couple of days exclusively thinking, shaping the characters, and seeing which how each of them could be interesting to different readers. And I think it's worked pretty well. Most of the reviews I've had so far mention the characters as the strength of Undead Samurai. So a lot of the very beginning, instead of focusing too much on the story, I really focused first on the characters, and then the story came naturally. It's not the most surprising story there is. I wanted something that was very easy to read and to enjoy.
So, what challenges you face when you're writing Undead Samurai?
Challenges. I don't know. This one came so naturally. there were not. There were not a lot of challenges. I think no. As with the Three Kingdoms Chronicles, the challenge is to write a book that feels authentic to the culture, so to Japanese culture here, but also accessible to Western readers. Most of my readers are in US, UK, Australia, and in Western countries, and while many of them will know Japanese culture to some extent, many of them don't. So I wanted to write a book that could be enjoyed by both people who know Japan and people who don't know anything about Japan. So it's always a challenge of balancing between putting too much vocabulary, for example, and not enough. So, well, that's just an example, but yeah, I think that was the only big challenge here.
Yes. So, Mr. Baptiste, how did you come up with the title of your latest novel, Undead Samurai?
This one is so how to say this, uh, quite easy, to be honest. I think I wanted to a title that speaks for itself. You see the title Undead Samurai, you know exactly what you're gonna get, and the point was to make it very easy for readers to pick this book. So if you like samurai, you will love it. If you like Japanese history in general, you will love it. If you love zombies, there's a big chance you'll like this one too. So, no, I think the title came very fast. And at first, I knew that if I created a series, it would be the Undead Warriors series. And each title is going to be Undead Samurai, Undead Spartans, Undead Pirates, maybe. So that's how it's going to go.
Yes. So, can you describe the main characters or themes in the Undead Samurai
Yep.
that
So
readers can look forward to?
Absolutely. So the story is set in 1625 exactly, and this is a few years after a very brutal time of Japan. So Japan was in a civil war. I feel like there's a theme here, but it was in a civil war until 1620, really. Even though the last 20 years were fairly more quiet, but the war itself stopped really in 1620. So it's set 5 years after. So Japan is still fragile. It's still recovering from decades of fighting with itself and with neighbors too. And the main character is called, simply called Ronin. So that's it's just a title for masterless samurai. And he's a samurai who doesn't have a master and roams the land, as did hundreds or thousands of them back then. Uh, Basically, they went from being used by warlords to having nothing to do, and that's his case. He's poor, he's downtrodden, he's lost pretty much all his possessions except his katana, and he's also a master of Yaido, so that's the art of drawing the sword and cutting it at the same time. And basically, he doesn't have much to do, and he's still looking for a reason to live or some some honor in his life. And then he hears about this contest being organized by a young daimyo, uh, and with a contest for samurai, for warriors. So he decides to join. And then, upon joining this contest, he realizes it's more than just a contest. It's actually a selection to a group of 10 warriors. At first, it's supposed to be 10 warriors, but there is a lot of mysteries. They don't know why there is this selection. They don't know what is the prize. It sounds too good to be true. And then when the 9 warriors who win this contest are being gathered, they realize actually there is a mission after this, and the point is to save Japan from a necromantic curse. So Ronin is like this mid 30s. So this character in his mid 30s who is looking for a reason to live, is amazingly skilled, and now he has to fight to save Japan from zombies. I would say he's the main character, but he's not the central character per se. Or maybe that's the opposite. He's kind of the central character, but he's not the main character. All the 9 characters have their chance to shine. They all have chapters dedicated to them, and we have some flashes into their lives before what made them join this contest and all of it. So yeah.
Oh, sounds interesting, Mr. Baptiste. And the samurai, what do you hope readers will take away from the book after they finish reading it?
Well, I really hope each reader will connect with at least one character very strongly. I feel like there is really a character for every person, every reader, and it's been very interesting to see reviews coming up since for the past 3 or 4 months, because I've sent a lot of advanced review copies, and everyone comes back telling me which character they loved, and there is a majority. There is a definite winner here. There is a character that seems to win a lot of fans, to gain a lot of fans, but some others too, right? And I love to see the reaction people get from such or such scene. So I think there's a lot of excitement as the story goes, and it's like readers start this book and the prologue is apparently very strong, so people like the prologue, and then the tension keeps going up and up and up until the end. And I had some readers coming back to me saying that they actually cried a couple of times in the book. So that's not what you would expect from a zombie story per se. But
That's right.
yeah, so I really hope readers will connect with those characters, will get a strong excitement by this story, and I think that's the kind of book that you read in a couple of days. My point is like, it's not too long. That's a what, 350 pages book, so it's quite regular in size, and I think it's the kind of book that you want to read in one go if you can, or just in 2 or 3 sittings. So that's the kind of readers. That's the kind of things readers can expect here. It's action.
Yes, definitely. Were there any particular authors or books that influence your writing style or content while you're writing Undead Samurai?
So yeah, there is actually this indie writer called Rob J. Ace, who wrote many amazing, many great books. But the book that really influenced Undead Samurai is called Never Die, and it's part of a series called the Mortal Techniques series. And the way it helped me write Undead Samurai is because his characters, his way to tell the story, first, absolutely fascinating, but also he doesn't hesitate to use tropes, almost cliche, you could say. So his characters are very easy, they are gripping, because we all, when you read his characters, you have a clear image of what those characters are, what they represent. You know, like martial arts masters, or it could be a samurai. It's very clear because he uses tropes in a inventive way. So I think this is the book that inspired Undead Samurai the most, because it allowed me, as I wrote Undead Samurai, to use tropes to make my characters more lively. Something I used to stay away from. But I think it influenced my writing quite a lot here.
Very well said, Mr. Betty. So, is there a specific scene or chapter in the book that you hold special meaning to you?
A special scene. I think really the last third of the book, there is this. Okay, so let's say like this: there is a big battle at the end. The battle is a very takes a maybe a third, maybe 25% of the book at the end, and the beginning of this battle has a few intense moments that, as I wrote them, I rarely felt as good about my writing as when I wrote this early stage of the last battle. There's a couple others, because the thing is that's a book I wrote as well as really I think I mentioned it in the notes. I wrote Undead Samurai as a love letter to Japan, and some of the places included in Undead Samurai are places that I love myself. The first chapter happens in a place called Jokoji, so a temple in Aichi, which is my favorite temple in Japan. Then they go, just after they go to Gifu Castle. So it's a famous castle in Japan. Not the most famous, it's rather small, but I've loved this castle and the location. So locations are very important to me in this book, personally, but a particular scene, yeah, that would be the early stage of the last battle.
Yes, indeed. But before we go on, Mr. Baptiste, I'm inviting you to please do visit our officially website of Food 101, www.food101.ca, and you're gonna learn a lot about culinary aspect to make your food delicious. And please do listen to our my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef and one of five-star restaurant in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about Osabuco and Polenta. Plus, our books are out, not only one, but 13 volumes, people. Book 101, Volume 1, Basics until 13 is only the books that you need. How to create a delicious food. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Mr. Baptiste, what do you think your book stands out in its genre or category?
I think one of the mentions I have quite regularly in the reviews are the action scenes, the battle scenes, and that are. I don't think I write them in any special way, but readers seem to enjoy the battle scenes quite well. Um, Personally, I think, yeah, for Undead Samurai, I said it earlier, but the characters are really the strength in the Three Kingdoms Chronicles. I think it's just how maybe easy, I want to say, it is to get into a stories set in a culture that people don't actually know so much about. in general. I hope that's what they will get from this book, is that they learn a lot about Chinese culture and Chinese history without prior knowledge of it. So now in all my books, I try to put to balance action and dialogues and descriptions. Though I must admit, I'm not the biggest fan of heavy descriptions. So don't expect me to describe every square inch of their attire or the buildings or these kind of things. So I think that's what stands out: the action scenes, the characters, and I think dialogues are getting better and better.
Yes, for sure. So, what kind of readers do you believe will connect most of an Undead Samurai, and why?
So for Undead Samurai, there are really two kinds of readers, I think, who will connect quite well to it. Right, readers of historical fiction in general, of course. They won't be lost if they are okay with a bit of fantasy. They should love Undead Samurai. So when I say historical fiction, I mean action, war, historical fictions in the line of Bernard Cornwell, Giles Christian, Matthew Harvey, and all those amazing writers. So that would be the first kind of readers. Second would be readers of the horror genre. Now, it's not as heavy horror as other books that trades with zombies and other creatures, but I still implemented enough horror to please them, I hope. As long as they are okay with a bit of action, I think they should like it. So if you like the characters of Michonne in The Walking Dead, you will probably like Undead Samurai as well.
Yes, for sure. So, what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are looking to embark on their own writing journey?
Well, I mean, there are so many uh, tips that could be given here. I think the first one is always the same. It's just start writing. Don't expect too much out of yourself from your first draft of your first book. There is a big chance your first book is not the one you will publish. Yellow Sky Revolt was the seventh book I wrote. So I wrote six books before I felt okay publishing one of them. And writing your first book or writing again and again will teach you more than you might learn from reading books on the writing crafts or watching YouTube videos or all of this. Of course, all of this is good. You need to read those books, you need to watch those videos, but writing is going to teach you more about yourself and about your style than anything else. So just keep writing.
Yes, keep writing. I stop procrastinating, people. Go for it. Who knows? You are one of the best in the making, like Mr. Baptiste Pinson Wu. Yes. So, how has your perspective as an author evolved since the publication of all your books?
Perspective. Um, I think it's one thing that changed a lot is the amount of time I expected to spend on writing versus promoting, editing, and all of this. I'm quite lucky in the way that I write really fast. And I know I can write a first draft in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, and still enjoy the process. And on promoting those books is well, the more time it is needed for the promotion. Editing is the same. I spend more and more time on editing, so that's a big change on the how I pictured the life of a writer. And yeah, I think that would be the biggest change, I would say.
Yes, very well said, Mr. Baptiste. So, can you share any interesting anecdotes or behind the scenes stories related the book's creation of Undead Samurai?
Um, all right, something I can share here with Undead Samurai is, like I said, the main character is using he's a student or a master, I could say, of a martial art called Yaido, though back then it would have been called Bato Jutsu. And this is a technique or a school of Kenjutsu that I have learned a little bit when I was in an exchange student in Japan. So I've included a lot of my personal experience in his drawing techniques. The names, for example, the names of the techniques that he uses might not be accurate to the time. I think those names came later, like 19th century, but I still use them because that was more an Easter egg to those great moments I had learning how to draw a katana and cutting with it. So
Yes.
I put some experience into it. Yeah.
So, Mr. Baptiste, how do you see your books fitting into a broader literary landscape or cultural conventions?
Well, I have no idea. I hope it will get enough success that my name and the books will spread very well in the world and that people will keep reading them. The thing is, historical fiction as a genre, or at least the books I'm writing, are have a readership that tend to be more towards 50 years old, 40 years old, compared to other fantasy genre that tends to grab the attention of younger readers as well. So I hope my readers will, stay with me too, in the sense that I hope younger readers will also find an attraction in the Three Kingdoms Chronicles and Undead Samurai and all the books I tend to publish later on. So I'm very lucky in that sense that I might have readers from every age, every gender, and culture interested in those books because they are about the past, so they are intemporal in that sense.
Congratulations, Mr. Baptiste, for all your books, and thank you for sharing them to the world. And one of your avid fan is Mr. Cody Engdahl, one of my guests on Book 101. He's my guest last yesterday. Mr. Baptiste, lastly, what's next for you as an author?
So the next book in the Three Kingdoms Chronicles is going to be released in May. So that's the very next step, I should say. It's called Forest of Swords, coming up May 8th. Sorry. And then the rest of the year, I plan to publish a trilogy, a mythology trilogy set based on the Norse mythology of Ragnarok. So it's a retelling of Ragnarok from the point of view of a soldier fighting in Odin's army. So it's a trilogy. It's all been written, and but because I wrote this trilogy 3-4 years ago, and it takes a lot of editing from me to make it readable right now. And it's going to be, I hope to release the first in August, and then the next two in October and December. So that would be 2024 would be a year with 5 publications if I manage, which is quite nice.
Looking forward for that, Mr. Baptiste, and you always come back and promote all those books. Okay, Mr. Baptiste, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
All right, with pleasure. So, dear listeners of Book 101, I invite you all to check the Three Kingdoms Chronicles and Undead Samurai if you want some action-packed historical fiction set in East Asian cultures with an S, because now we have China and Japan. And keep in touch with me so you don't miss the next releases.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Baptiste Pinson Wu, because if you support him, more historical fiction to come. And we're looking forward for your fantasy or like Ragnarok as a mythical novel. I hope you will be the next Neil Gaiman of Asia.
That would be pretty good. Neil Gaiman of Asia. I like it.
So, Mr. Baptiste, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Daniel.